All right, good afternoon, everyone. The time is now 4 p.m., so I'll call to order the Wednesday, August 19th, 2026 meeting of the Capital Area Transportation Authority Board of Directors and ask our secretary to please call the roll. Here. All right. With a quorum being present, we'll go ahead and proceed with our agenda, which our next item is public comments on agenda items. This is the time we set aside during each of our meetings to take comments on any item on this evening's agenda. We ask that folks please consider filling out a blue card at the blue table over there to assist our secretary and to limit your comments to 3 minutes. We will have a timer to assist you with that. I will note just one deviation from our normal procedure this evening because tonight is our official public hearing on the fiscal 27 budget and 2026 property tax levy. If your comments relate to the budget, we'll have a special designated time for those comments as well. So having said that, I will call cards in the order in which I've received them, though I believe both cards that I have so far, Mr. Nolan, yours is on a non-agenda item, so it'll be towards the end of the meeting, and Mr. Blankenship, yours is regarding the budget, so we'll get to that in just a moment at the budget hearing. Having no other cards submitted, let me just ask the room, is there anyone else present who wishes to offer public comment on agenda items this evening? All right, seeing none, then we will move forward to our public hearing on the fiscal 2027 budget and the 2026 property tax levy. For those who are watching at home or in the room, we have some procedural steps to get through here, and then we will actually come back to this item on our business agenda later in the meeting. So just bear with me here for a second. Today is August 19th, 2026. The time is 4:02 p.m. The board will now commence its public hearing on CATA's proposed fiscal 2027 budget and the 2026 property tax levy. Notice of this hearing was published on CATA's website at cata.org, July 17th, 2026. Notice was posted at the CATA Administration Building at 517 South Washington Avenue, the Downtown CTC, the MSU CTC, and the Capital Area Multimodal Gateway, July 17th, 2026. Notice was distributed to CATA's social media networks on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and X, formerly Twitter, July 18th, July 24th, July 31st, August 6th, August 12th, August 17th, and August 19th, 2026 at various times. Notice was mailed July 17th, 2026 via the United States Postal Service to 174 private agencies, human services organizations, and organizations that prioritized disadvantaged and underserved populations. Notice was emailed July 17th, 2026 to 80 private agencies, human service organizations, and organizations that prioritize disadvantaged and underserved populations. Notice was also emailed July 17th, 2026 to the cities of Lansing and East Lansing, as well as the townships of Delhi, Lansing, and Meridian. Notice was emailed July 17th, 2026 to the Ingham County Board of Commissioners, as well as Michigan State University. Notice was published in the Lansing State Journal on July 19th, 2026 and August 1st. As well as online at lsj.com, July 19th through August 19th, 2026. Notice was published in the Lansing City Pulse, July 22nd, 2026, and the July 29th, 2026, as well as online at lansingcitypulse.com, July 22nd, 2026 through August 22nd, 2026. Notice was published in the Chronicle News, August 1st, 2026, and August 15th, 2026, as well as online at chroniclenews.com, August 1st, 2026 through August 31st, 2026. Notice was published in the New Citizens Press, August 11th, 2026 through August 24th, 2026. The proposed fiscal year 2027 budget would establish an operating budget of $64,998,945. The proposed 2026 property tax levy of 3.007 mils is to support the operating budget. At this time, I'll first ask our staff if there are any comments that have been received, and then we'll open the meeting for comments for those who are in attendance. Our CEO, Brad Funkhauser, will now report on any comments that have been received prior to this meeting related to the proposed budget or tax levy. Brad?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We did not receive any comments on the budget or the proposed tax levy, but unique to this year, if you do not mind, I would like to insert that we have received well over 800 comments on the COA since the beginning of the year, and we're going into phase 3. We've also received 40 comments on the service changes that are going into effect Monday. And finally, our public involvement on the listening buses have gotten over 110 comments. I wanted to assure the public, the board, and those present that those comments have been taken into consideration and will be moving forward. But specific to the budget and this hearing, we have not received comments.
Thank you, Brad. So at this time, I'll open the meeting for public comment regarding the proposed budget or proposed tax levy. I'll call on those in the room who wish to make comments, first in the order in which I've received blue cards on this subject, and then the room generally. Your time to comment will be limited to 5 minutes. When I call on you, if you are able, please stand and tell us your name. You can make your comments from the podium up there so folks can hear you in the room. And if there's anyone here who wishes to make comment, I'll ask for you to raise your hands after we do cards first. So we have had a card submitted on this item, and that is from Dusk Blankenship. Would you like to go head to the podium, Mr. Blankenship? I apologize, sir. Could you use there's a microphone at the black podium. It helps make sure that folks in the room can hear as well as people online. I apologize.
Public transportation, backbone of the city. Testing. Good. Public transportation is the backbone of a city. It enables people to contribute to the economy. It lets people access resources, doctor's appointments, jobs, and more. It's a public good and an equalizer, giving people opportunities. Cutting public transport costs cuts people's options, but also limits and cuts their ability to participate in the city and community. Downtown already looks like a ghost town sometimes. So many vacant buildings, sometimes multiple in a row. Decreasing access to travel ain't exactly going to make that better. It's easy to overlook public transport, but less travel is less quality of life for both citizen and city. I want people to engage with, explore, and enjoy the city. I want people to not only survive, but thrive, and consistent and convenient public transportation is a means to that end. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. That's the only card I've had submitted in advance, so let me just ask the room, is there anyone else who wishes to offer public comment regarding the budget or tax levy at this time? All right. Seeing none, as there are no further public comments, I will now close this public hearing on CATA's proposed fiscal 27 budget and 2026 tax levy. The time is 4:08 p.m. So again, just to explain our procedure here for folks in the room or who may be watching online, we'll move to our next regular item of business now, and we will return to both the budget and tax levy when we get to our discussion agenda. So that brings us to chair's comments. I just have two notes this evening. One is a request from our colleague, Shanna, who's unable to be here this evening due to a conflict, and she requested an excused absence. Is there a motion to excuse that absence? Moved by Chelsea. Is there a second? Seconded by Steve. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries and Shanna's absence is excused. You also might have noted during the roll call earlier, at our last meeting, we said goodbye to our colleague Jack Schmidt, who had been representing the city of East Lansing, and the East Lansing City Council has appointed Julie Rajewski to that vacancy. Julie was unable to make it this evening, but we look forward to welcoming her at a future meeting as one of East Lansing's representatives on this board of directors. With that, let me turn it over to Brad for his Chief Executive Officer's report. Brad.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, guests, and members of the public. I will be brief in my statements. We have a full agenda tonight. First, we were pleasantly surprised to be invited to the airport last week. Congressman Barrett was hosting a roundtable with U.S. Secretary of Transportation Sean Duffy. Members of the transportation industry, both cargo and passengers, were invited to have a brief but personal conversation with him about funding and safety and other things. And it was nice to be invited to that and participate with our colleagues there. I wish that I could be bringing back better news on what we expect to be funded in the transportation bill, but nevertheless, we are on their radar, and points were made about the need for transit, similar to our public comment a little while ago. Also, last week on the 10th, was invited to speak to the Council of the Whole at City Council. This is usually an annual update, and in particular, this was to discuss the upcoming service changes. We had Andrew and I, Deputy CEO, did a presentation, had a fairly long Q&A with them. A lot of their questions revolved around public involvement and how the public involvement process works and where the comments come from and how we go and solicit those comments. And thus, I wanted to make sure in my public hearing comment that you knew that we were also tracking those as well. If you didn't hear, the Screaming Eagle train arrived in East Lansing yesterday. We had not only representation from staff hosting over there, CN and MSU, but our board chair and our resident guru train expert on the board, Steve Vagnosi, were in attendance, and I understand that was quite an impressive show on its way to Durand. So we were asked to participate. Thank you, John, and it was great to help our colleagues out there. This was celebrating the 250th anniversary. And as you know, trains precede all the rest of our transportation modes by a long shot. So believe it or not, this coming Monday, we start fall service, Spartan service over at MSU. We have arrived at folks moving in and us gearing up. So that will be starting Monday. And finally, my thanks to Deputy CEO Andrew Brisky, who attended the Michigan Public Transit Association conference. He serves on their board and just got back from a lot of state updates, which we may or may not be talking about in the near future. Thank you, Andrew. That's my report, sir.
Thank you, Brad. Any questions or comments from members of the board on Brad's report? All right, seeing none, we'll move forward on our agenda to our next item, which is the proposed consent agenda this evening. That includes 5 items for the board's consideration. Those are the approval of the minutes of the July 2026 board meeting, the treasurer's report for June 2026, the Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan 2027 targets, the renewal of an appointment to the local advisory council, and finally, the extension of the Student Housing Transit Services Agreement Addendum 21. Does any member of the board desire to have any of these items removed from our consent agenda to the discussion agenda? Mark. All right. E, does any other items to remove to the discussion agenda? Okay, so is there a motion to approve the balance of the consent agenda? Then moved by Mark, seconded by Steve. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries. The consent agenda is approved, less former item E, the extension of Student Housing Transit Services Agreement Addendum 21, which is now the first item on our discussion agenda. So Mark, let me turn it over to you first, and then we can go staff. Go ahead.
Maybe I actually use a microphone. I just have a couple of specific questions about how we handle the cooperative arrangement with the apartments. I thought that there was like a brief moment during which we thought maybe we weren't going to get a renewal from them, and we did get renewal from everybody, or?
That is correct, sir. In fact, my understanding is that we do this annually,
Right.
and we usually come to terms with the apartment complexes at the beginning of August, which we did again with all of them. It has been suggested, and I've asked Andrew to head up an earlier calendar with the complexes we've been doing this for a number of years. So
Yep.
if we can frankly make their leasing of the apartments easier since things have changed and we have a discussion earlier tied in with the university, we will. And so we're not doing this every year.
Okay. So some specific questions. Do we reach an agreement with them per bed? Or do they get bus passes in exchange for the agreement? I mean, what exactly are we
Sure.
trading? I mean, I've never seen the contract come back to us. So
Sure. Mr. Chairman, if I could have Andrew address that, I would appreciate it.
Thank you, Brad, and thank you, Commissioner Grebner, for the question. So yes, as Brad mentioned, this is a long-standing contract. We initiated the agreement in 2002. The complex formerly known as Abbott Place was the first complex that we partnered with. And then further north, as more complexes were built and came online, we continued to engage with their management. Currently, we are in Amendment 20, and before you were proposing Amendment 21. The initial term of the contract was 5 years, so it expired in 2007, and we've been working on amendments ever since. As Brad mentioned, typically we would reach out in the summer, and for certainly most of my tenure, the apartment complexes were eager to sign on because they used it in some of their promotional materials, meaning the bus pass. More specifically to your question, yes, that is the primary question we ask them each summer. What is your bed count at the complex? In fact, the contract explicitly stipulates that they pay based on how many beds they have, not how many people are actually living there. And then if I could just add, we've been working with operations, planning, and finance, and they will be getting their bus passes by the end of this week.
If I could just keep following up here, I mean, this involves a huge number of rides. I mean, it seems like this isn't just a contract with somebody. This is like the entirety of Route 26 and a big chunk of some other routes. So do we sell bus passes in effect at full price? Do we discount them? How much do we get per bed? I mean, tell me, how is this calculated? Just roughly. I mean, if you don't, it doesn't have to be to the penny, but.
It is calculated on a per bed, but we also look at the service hours planned for the year. And as you mentioned, yes, those complexes do consist of the bulk of the ridership on the route. But it's important to point out that we have a lot of residents of East Lansing who rely on the route south of Lake Lansing Road. And operations planning are very careful to make sure that there's additional equipment on the route to accommodate people who may not live in the complexes. As far as a specific dollar amount, I'm sorry, I couldn't give you an exact figure off the top of my head, but I can tell you that it is each complex times the number of beds, and then we sell those passes at $50 a piece, but we recoup. We don't charge them for those passes per se because it's all baked into the service price that they're paying for their contract.
But so something like $20 or $25 per bed per month, or some. I mean, just as I'm just trying to estimate how much we're talking about.
Yeah, the total contract is planning to bring in 499,000, but I can't tell you off the top because I don't have the numbers of beds.
499 is plenty close. Okay, that's good. And then finally, is there a distinction between people who complexes that are in our millage area? You mentioned Abbott Place, which is of course in the city of East Lansing and pays a millage, and places that are outside the millage area, like in Bath Township?
Correct, and we do account for that as well.
So we charge a higher per bed price in Bath Township?
They do pay a little more outside the service area, yes.
A little bit more. Okay. I guess that's everything I need. Thank you.
Other questions? Phil?
Andrew, are these sold?
I'm sorry, Phil, could you use the mic? I apologize.
Are these sold primarily for students or employees or a mix of both? Reason I ask is that I understand that MSU students have a CATA pass as part of their enrollment with MSUs.
So just so I'm clear, are you asking, are the residents up there primarily students?
Yes, are these bought primarily for students?
Yes, so the passes that we give out, and I keep looking back to Jim because Jim and his department are instrumental in getting the proper number of passes per complex. But the pass that they get is a student semester pass, and it's good on the entire CATA system with unlimited rides for each semester. So they will get an allotment of passes this week for the fall. And then when we start up the January sign up, they will get another allotment of passes for the spring semester.
What if a resident wasn't a student but an employee of the university? Would they also get a pass?
I'm sorry, an employee of the university or the complex?
And no, employee of the university that needs to commute from wherever to campus every day.
If they are living in one of those complexes, even if they're not a student, they would get one of those passes. Because in kind of marketing the complexes, they advertise the CATA bus service. So they don't stipulate if you're only a student. So if it is a resident who is living there and they sign a lease, then they too would get a pass.
Which, help me out here, I don't understand, with student passes, are those only issued to students who live in university housing? Or is it just living in the dorms, those students get the CATA pass, or do all students get the CATA pass?
So on the campus routes, it's actually fare free. So they do not have a fare pass per se because it's open door service on the 30 routes. If they have a CATA student semester pass, and they're not living in a complex, anyone can buy a student semester pass. They just have to demonstrate that they're a student, either when they buy it at the booth at the transit center across the street, or if they stipulate they're a student when they buy the pass online. But to be clear, those student semester passes, when we call the semester, we're referring to that date range. So from the start of sign up, which is Monday, through the end of the calendar year. If you are a student, you do not necessarily have to be an MSU student. And you can purchase one of those unlimited use passes. But for residents of those complexes, they will get one as part of their lease.
Thanks, Bill. Other questions on this item from board members? Go ahead, Chelsea.
Is there does the use of that route really go down when the students aren't there? So during the summer?
Yes, it does go down significantly in the summer. In fact, what we call base level service on Route 26 is every 45 minutes. When MSU is in session, or Spartan service, as we have starting on Monday, peak service levels are every 7 to 10 minutes, depending on the time of day and the day of the week. But like right now, for instance, it's one bus. We typically put an articulated bus out there to exercise the vehicle because we don't use all 12 of them throughout the summer. But we'll exercise those articulated buses, and it's one bus every 45 minutes when school is not in session.
Thanks, Chelsea. Other questions from board members? Go ahead, Ed.
Sorry to put you on the spot. Do we also have student passes for like LCC and the various universities that have classes in Lansing?
Yes, we do, but we don't stipulate a specific pass for each school or college or university. There's a student semester pass, and it is available to anyone who may be a student, be it in a high school, LCC, MSU, but they're not differentiated based on the institution they attend. It's just a student pass. And to be fair, we offer more pass types than just the semester pass. We have student 10 ride cards, 31-day passes, so that people can buy them in different denominations and lengths of time and different ride counts. But it's the unlimited semester pass that the complexes receive.
Thank you.
Any further questions on this item? Thank you, Andrew. If not, is there a motion to approve the Student Housing Transit Services Agreement Addendum 21 moved by Mark? Is there a second? Seconded by Eric or Ed? Let's call it Eric for this one. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries, which brings us to the balance of our discussion agenda, beginning with the Grand Avenue bus lane. Brad, let's start with you on this one.
Thank you, board members. This is a project that's been sitting in our capital plan for a little while, and we're bringing it to you today. I'm going to have Norm, our facilities manager, give you a quick overview of it. It basically is the rebuild of the front facade of Grand Avenue that will be sitting across the street from City Hall. And when I say that, you'll understand why we waited until the construction would line up with the City Hall. Norm, would you please, Mr. Chairman, give the board an overview of the scope of this project?
Good afternoon. Thank you. CATA has outgrown the CTC. Parking at the CTC for our operations has been a challenge for a very long time. So we've been working on this, frankly, for a couple of years in conjunction with the CTC rehab project to try to make improvements to the overall building and our operation. The timeliness of it is actually working out quite well from a CTC rehab project, which is slated to begin this fall. The Grand Avenue project, which if everything works out well, should be starting in the fall also. Obviously, as Brad mentioned, City Hall is being constructed just adjacent from here and with the purchase of the 511 building. From a scope perspective on the project, as Brad had mentioned, the landscape will come out along Grand Avenue. The flagpoles come down. We move the curb to the east. We get a new ADA ramp to replace the ramp that's there. The steps get removed. So if you're familiar with the site, there's steps that connect to the front fascia of the facade of the building. The steps will not be there. But what will be happening is dub down to move the curb back to allow bus parking for 6 buses. We're hoping to get 7 or 8, but there's some sightline issues pertaining to the intersection with Lenawee. We've got to be back about 140 feet because of the speed limit through there. But parking for 6 buses is still a victory in my opinion. We're future proofing this to the best of our abilities. So the sidewalk where the buses will park is deep enough to potentially offer shelters in the future if we so to make that decision. CATA released an IF bid a couple months ago. So an invitation for bid is a low bid award. We've selected a contractor. We're optimistic it gets approved this evening, obviously. It's funded with state and federal grant funds. Again, that work's estimated to completed this fall.
Go ahead, Brett.
One last comment, if I could, in conjunction with the city hall, and we've been in touch with the mayor's office, and we appreciate him. We approached him very early on after the two-way street conversion on Grand, and buses used to park on Grand, and there was nothing across the street there, Barry Amos in a parking lot. Well, it's gotten quite crowded down there, and it's going to even get more crowded. So in conversations with his office, they were very kind to allow Lenawee Street here now to be bus-only parking. So in doing that, we were able to then look at this design, which we hope was going to match the facade and the look of City Hall to make it very, at a human scale, nice to walk down. And then potentially future grants, when we're talking about this building and the front of Lenawee, you'd be able to see a very nice walkable area from basically where Barry Amos is now all the way over to the Ovation. So Norm, thank you for your work on this and keeping this moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Norm. Thank you, Brad. Mark, you have a question?
So-
Go ahead.
I kind of thought you'd come up and show us the sketch, but there's no sketch. Does this mean that there's like a reveal later on and it's going to be cake and cookies and
I'd be
coffee?
happy to follow up with a reveal.
I'm sorry?
I'd be happy to follow up with a reveal.
Okay. But I mean, you don't have anything to put up there on the screen now.
I don't have a true rendering from the street perspective with me at this moment.
Okay.
Go ahead, Steve.
Just an observation. It's really a parking lane. When I first saw that bus lane, I thought it might be like a traditional long, bus lane for blocks. But my real question is it unusual to only get one bid?
So CATA had a vendors list that it was sent out to. It's posted on the CATA website. It's posted on Transit Talent. And then there's a couple other ways that CATA does post it. So you're correct. CATA did receive one bid. So what CATA then does, the procurement department reaches out to the vendors that we had emailed it to, for example, and we got a couple of responses back. One, the one contractor had difficulty in getting a concrete subcontractor lined up. So that's why they didn't bid. And the other one, I don't remember who it was, responded back that they just had too much of a workload going on, and that's why they didn't provide a bid.
I'm just hoping that this doesn't become a trend.
Go ahead, Brad.
I appreciate the diligence on that. I will tell you, this is funded out of formula money. And so this is actually put into a folder. We have very rigid, both local, state and federal FTA guidelines. They have a clause about single bids. And if, we have this reviewed through our legal process. And so I agree with you. You want a number of contractors, but in the instance where you have a one-off and you have one contractor, it's got another process. We got a lot of paperwork, so it's not just, oh, well. So thank you for the question, though.
Did I see a hand over here? Not. Um, all right, then just very quickly before I call for a motion on this, sometimes I think projects like this can get lost in the mix. But I recall, without naming any names, very distinctly when they did the street conversion, getting a couple of contacts from folks in city government who seemed surprised to discover that there were that many buses coming in and out of the CATA CTC, because that had been somewhat concealed by the way that the streets were constructed. And so I think making sure, and you're using your words too, future proofing this so that we're taking account of the new streetscape, we're looking around here, that's important, even if it's not always the most flashy work that gets done. So thank you for your work on this.
Thank you.
All right, is there a motion to approve the contract related to the Grand Avenue bus or parking lane? Moved by Phil, is there a second? Seconded by Mark. All those, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries, which brings us to the CATA Rural Service Fare Structure Modification. We talked a little bit about this at our last board meeting, but let me hand it over to you, Brad, for additional information.
And I will ask Andrew to come up and address this, both B and C, if you're okay with that. They are related. He will explain how these fit into not only the fall service changes and the COA and the budget. Go ahead, Andrew.
Thank you, Brad. So as Brad mentioned, there are two proposed action items before you tonight with respect to the fare on our out-county services. The first is related to what we call CATA Rural Service, or CRS. This is a general public demand response bus service that serves the counties outside the 5 jurisdictions that are part of the funding area through our main millage. I should point out that both of these services are funded through the county's millage of 0.6, which passed overwhelmingly a couple weeks ago, which we are very grateful for. But with respect to CRS, or CATA Rural Service, we understand that one of the comments we get back about the out-county services is that we have so many different service types and so many different fare structures that can be hard to memorize the different parameters of each one. So with respect to CRS, the long-standing fare has been based on distance traveled, because we go all the way from Stockbridge to Onondaga, Leslie, and everywhere in between. So traditionally, if your trip was 10 miles or longer on a CRS bus, you would pay the base fare, which would be $325, and then there's a discounted fare, as noted in your action item, for people with disabilities, seniors, and students. What we have found is that 90%, it's about 90.5, of trips taken on CRS are under 10 miles. So as part of this proposed service change, it is our recommendation that we simplify the fare, and we start by having one fare for CRS, especially based on how few trips are collecting the full $325. And it's worth noting that not only are only about 10% of those trips over 10 miles, thus the full $325, but nearly half of those riders pay a discounted fare. So in reality, staff had suggested that it would be best to streamline it to the lower fare, because that's what the vast majority of people are paying anyway. I'd be happy to go on to the connector if you would like, Brad, or if there are questions on this, happy to entertain those.
Any questions specific to rural service fare structure before we talk about the connector, and then we can come back and do both together if the board would like that. All right, seeing none, Andrew, let's talk about the connector.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So with respect to the connector, this action item speaks only to the fare on the Mason connector service and the Williamston-Weberville connector service. Again, small cutaway buses. These operate much like a fixed route. For those of you who've gone past Meridian on Grand River or down Cedar Street all the way into Mason, you will see CATA bus stops. Those are for the connector. And the connector will pick people up at those stops. But what's unique about the connector is both the Weberville-Williamston connector and the Mason connector will accept ride deviations of up to 1 mile off of the main route. With respect to the fares, I was up here a month ago, if you recall, and I had spoken about the upcoming public meetings. Thank you, Brandy and Kai from marketing and planning, and Dustin, who helped lead those meetings. One of the most common feedback comments we received had to do with the fare on the limiteds. Right now, we operate Route 46, the Mason Limited, and 48, the Weberville Williamston Limited. Fare is like any other fare on a fixed route downtown, $1.25. But the connector fare is $2.25. And the concern that we heard from the public was, I still plan on using your bus. I need the connector. I'm not real happy about a fare increase. And as we took those comments back, we believe that to be a reasonable request. So that is what led to the action item before you. We are proposing to reduce the connector fare, not just for the former riders of, or the riders of the former 46 and 48, but having a simple $1.25 fare for all connectors, because in our opinion, it operates like a fixed route anyway.
Thanks, Andrew. Questions on the connector fare, Derek?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Brad or Andrew, what's the hit we take on the reduction? I mean, I'm sure it's not substantial. And how is that gap made up?
Thank you for the question. The gap on the connector fares?
On both of them. So
Okay.
we're reducing fares. So what do we lose and where's that made up?
Sure. So sticking with the connector service, in fiscal 2025, we provided 5,900 rides on the Mason connector, 5,900. And 85 to 90% of those customers pay the reduced fare. The current reduced fare is $1. So if we take that same percentage, 85 to 90%, being $1 per fare, that would be reduced to 60 cents. So the $5,310 would go down to approximately $3,200, or a hit of about $2,100 for that year on the Mason connector. And just going straight to the numbers on the Weberville Williamston connector, traditional ridership is about 50% who pay the full fare, 50% who pay the discounted fare. So substantially lower amount of people, customers on the Williamston connector pay substantially less, pay the discounted fare. The hit there is approximately $900. With respect to CRS, as I mentioned, currently 90% of those trips in the most recent year paid the $2.25 or the 10 under 10 mile distance, excuse me. And that total price, just going straight to the numbers, looking at the ridership from FY25, is approximately $5,700 that would be lost. We had 17,000, roughly 17,500 trips on CRS in FY25.
Okay, so we're looking at about $9,000 off of both. Is that fair? Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
Approximately, yes.
And I would respectfully say that is weighed against the change in equipment and hours that we're saving. So that's the gross fare reduction.
Thanks, Derek. Phil?
I'll be supporting both of these. I think it's a good idea to simplify the fare. And I think in many cases, reduce them. These are tough times for people. And even though our fuel rates have doubled, essentially, or gone up 50% in the past year, people that are using these rural services are hurting like most people are. So it's a good signal to say that where we can cut fares, we are, and making the rural service more available to, or more affordable.
Thanks, Phil. Other questions or comments on either of these items? Go ahead, Mark.
I thought we were still in the questions part, and so I was going to save my comments. Generally speaking, it's a good idea for us to kind of get all these things as similar to, in the public's eyes as possible. I occasionally find myself discussing even with rural commissioners. I did last night at a board meeting, and she made it, I told her that the connectors or the express service, which we call limited, is going away. She was shocked, and that means no more service to Williamston. I said, no, you still have the connector. Oh, we're going to keep, and of course you'll have CATA rural service. And in Meridian, they have Meridian dial ride, and in Delhi, they have Delhi dial ride, and in Mason, the dial ride will be going away, but they'll still have CATA rural service, the connector, but they'll lose them. She's just baffled, right? She thought she understood something about how we provide services, and really having different fares that require kind of like study is just a mistake. And the amount of money we're talking about here is so small. If I start comparing it to some of my favorite projects and how much money we're spending on those, I'll just spare you right now. But the point is, we're talking about a few $1,000s in a $60 million budget. And we really are creating a certain amount of bafflement for the public. Okay, so having one fare, $1.25, and having a discounted fare of 60 cents, and transfers are free, and that's really all you need to know. And if you can never keep track of whether this is rural service or the connector service, or it doesn't, just get on the bus. It's okay. So.
Thanks, Mark. Derek.
Just to clarify for Commissioner Grevner, just because I ask a question doesn't mean I necessarily oppose something. I just was curious.
Fair enough. Other questions or comments on either of these items? Seeing none from the board, Andrew, did you have additional information you wanted to share before we?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Commissioner Grebner, I just want to point out, I appreciate your comments. There had been some concern that with the limiteds going away, that these customers would have zero access to downtown. And that is not the case. We are working very diligently with planning and marketing and our partners at TransDev to ensure that those trips that would typically be offered in a large 40-foot bus, the time points to the extent possible, and the service to get people downtown in time for those living in those communities will still be there, but it will be on a different vehicle and no longer a large bus. But thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Last call, any questions, or go ahead, Mark.
I guess we're not going to discuss the specific service changes other than as it comes up tangentially here, but the elimination of some services that we've tried for a decade or 2 decades or 3 decades to make work, and they're just not cost-effective services. And finally, now that we are, looking at a looming deficit, we're finally finding the courage to admit that. But the limiteds they never recovered from COVID. It's sad to lose them. It seems like we ought to have commuter service from downtown Lansing to Mason and Williamston. It hasn't worked. We're finally admitting that. We should admit that in some other cases too. But I'm completely in favor, as sad as it is, of admitting that the Mason dial ride and the limiteds and so forth have just not, they are not performing at a level which is appropriate for the expenditure of the amount of money necessary to make them work. And the CATA's expenditures on those are so much larger than the tiny fare box revenues. I mean, if Farebox is 5% of those trips, I would be surprised. So anyway, we're all just sort of standing around and saying goodbye forever to the commuter run out to Mason, which will be replaced by an almost as good connector service. So,
thanks, Mark. Before I call for a motion on the rural service fare structuring modification, I would just note for the board, during the Lansing City Council Committee of the Whole meeting where Andrew and Brad presented, there was a question from a council member about how public input is taken into the actions that this board takes. And I thought that Andrew and Brad did a good job of highlighting this as a specific example where it had not been part of the initial discussion. The public offered feedback to the authority responded with an example here. So to the extent that there can be some cynicism out there about whether or not it's worth commenting on our budget or tax levy or service changes or whatnot, this is something that might not have happened but for those public comments. So thank you to the members of the public who weighed in on this issue. Is there a motion to approve the CATA rural service fare structure modification? Moved by Ed, seconded by Kelly. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries. Likewise, is there a motion to approve the connector fare modification? Moved by Phil, seconded by Steve. Any discussion on this item? Further discussion on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries. All right. Thanks, Andrew. That brings us back, having conducted our public hearing earlier in the meeting, first to the 2026 property tax levy. Brad, did you have additional comments that you wanted to make on this item?
Do not. This is our annual tax levy proposal. If there are questions, I would remind the board that it does say 3.007, and that is correct. And the difference is that we forego the Headley override on that, so it turns out to be about 2.9958. But you'll see those two numbers interchange, but 3.007 is correct. And with the Headley override is just below 3.
Thanks, Brad. Phil.
Just for clarification, this is the millage that was put before the voters in the fall of 25 and approved, correct?
It went before during the presidential election, so it went a year early in 24 and is good through 30.
It was 24.
24.
Other questions or comments on this item? Mark?
I always make my little comment that we have an extremely high millage rate because we have extremely high level of support from the public, and the public has almost always come through for us. And we provide a very high level of service compared to all the other metropolitan areas in the state. Now, it's a slightly different question, but 2 weeks ago, we had a countywide renewal of our millage, different millage, of course, it was the county, but again, public transit. And that passed at a higher rate than the zoo, than the trails, my beloved trails. It got 79% yes. The public likes public transit in this area. And of course, that election included a great number of people in rural areas who are historically less favorable to taxation. So that if we think about what the percentage yes on that millage within the CATA service area, I'm talking about the line haul service area, the 3 townships and 2 cities, I haven't broken it out, but it must have been 83 or 84% yes, which is another indication that the public supports us. They have entrusted us with a lot, and we have an obligation to honor their trust.
Thank you, Mark. Other comments from board members or questions on this item? All right, seeing none, is there a motion to approve the 2026 property tax levy? Moved by Derek, seconded by Chelsea. Any further discussion? I'm not sure there's a lot to add to what Mark said, so thank you. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries. The levy is approved, which brings us to our final discussion item agenda for this evening, which is the fiscal year 2027 budget approval. Brad.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. By policy, the end of June, we delivered a budget to you with an operating budget of $64,998,945 proposed. And as the chairman indicated at the beginning of the meeting, we went through the hearing process, the public notice process. I have Jim here to answer specific questions about the budget if you have them. And I also have staff if there are specific questions about any of the departmental budgets. And I will turn it back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Brad. Questions or comments from board members on the 27 budget? Go ahead, Mark.
I feel like I'm monopolizing things. I happen to have a cattle dog as a companion, and I've thought a lot about the role of cattle dogs, and I think I play the role of cattle dog a little bit here. Cattle dogs and sheep dogs don't actually bite the animals they herd. They just try to keep them nervous, and they try to keep them feeling that they like to stay away from the herding dog. And so the herding dog has a kind of an obligation to be mean, just to keep them moving. And I'd just like to keep this board sort of moving. I'd like you to move a little faster, and that's all. I won't actually bite anybody, but we provide some services like the line haul services that we have just talked about ending. And we're going to be providing, it drives me crazy, the service into Spartan Village, which is going to continue. And I'm going to probably bring this up a few more times. We're spending $500 a day to serve 30 people in Spartan Village, most of whom have cars. $500 a day on 30 people. And I don't even know that the university has long-term plans, but that's mainly just me growling at you. We should be thinking not just about those cases, what I call the easy decisions, but harder decisions. I don't think other transit agencies move faster than we do, but I'd like us to move faster. I'd like us to recognize the need for change faster. So this budget is fine as far as it goes, but the herd is just sort of moseying, and I just feel like it's my job to make you all anxious. So could we just kind of pick up the pace a little bit, folks? Like next year, let's actually like eliminate some services, change some services, and begin to really explore the new options that are opening up in the world. I mean, that's all. Woof, woof. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Go ahead, Steve.
I guess I'll follow that with my perspective is that the COA findings are going to play a big role in my mind in our FY28 budget. I'm a data person. We'll have more data when that study provides recommendations than we do now. So I would encourage the rest of us to, take a good analytical look, and they're going to be more trade-offs than we had this year.
Thanks. Thank you, Steve. Other comments? Go ahead, Phil.
I missed the public budget sessions that we had, including the one in Meridian due to travel. Brad, would you care to share a summary of what we heard at those public meetings, or what we heard on the listening bus regarding the new budget and the elimination of some services?
Absolutely, and I know Dustin's here and we'll follow up if I miss anything, but we had a number of public meetings, but we also had listening sessions on the bus. This year in particular, we had to be very clear about the service changes proposed for Monday versus the COA, because the COA was really digging in deep. In fact, one of the quotes that came out of the Council of the Whole was that this is our annual short-term planning to plan the budget, and the COA is really a long-term projection and blueprint for how we do it in the years to come. There was concern from the people who attended those meetings because it was being reported as service cuts, and in some of the reporting, they would just list routes that potentially were going to go away. So there was a lot of ground game in making sure that people knew that they were specific timing cuts. And this year in particular, with the help of our conversations since January, is that we're really changing the type of service and getting more efficient. That was the theme of this year. And so we were able to really pull in that input, and we got some great input, as the chairman said, that made a difference in how we formed the service. If you don't mind, Dustin, would you like to follow on?
Yeah, so we did get a lot of good feedback about service changes, and that's again where now fair changing out of conversation connection service being to kind of incorporate it and still provide that service, but do it in a more cost-effective way that addresses budget that we had. So we made sure that whenever possible, we wanted to make sure we hear the public out, but also keeping in mind that these cuts are not likely that something that is tied to budget and data back in our.
last comment, Philip. And I'm kind of excited about it being a professional planner all these years, and to Dustin's credit and Brandy's credit, we have quite a library of folks, as I read off, who have commented on a number of studies. That's great because the conversation is going to continue through the fall and into next year. And this is probably the largest community input that I have seen in my tenure here, and certainly since we had BRT and some other very large projects going on. So rest assured, the public is being heard right now.
Thanks, Brad. Thanks, Dustin. Other comments from board members on this item? I'll just note, especially when we use a process like we did this year, where we've had essentially 8 months of continuous budget meetings of one way or another, by the time we get to the meeting where we approve the budget, it can feel a little anticlimactic, and a lot of the discussion has already been had. So I preface my comment with that just to say thank you to the board members and the staff who have put a lot of work into this over the course of the last 8 months and had some challenging conversations, perhaps have not pushed as far on some issues as we could or should in the future. And I appreciate Commissioner Grebner's comment in that regard. And I don't even disagree with it. But I do think for my part, similar to what I said at our last meeting, that this budget represents an attempt by this board and the staff to hit a place where we are preserving the greatest amount of service for the greatest number of riders, with a special eye, hopefully, towards unique situations where folks might not have another option. The solution might be imperfect, but reflecting on some of the conversations I had at the APTA board member seminar in Detroit a few weeks ago, it's not a comparison or competition game, but I would rather be in our present fiscal situation and having the options that we have at our disposal this budget year and in the intermediate and immediate years to come than several of those folks who I spoke with at that meeting. And that's to, in large part, to the credit of this board, but even more so to the work of our staff in helping keep the buses on the road and trying to minimize the pain that has been created by fiscal challenges at the state and federal level. So that is a long way of saying thank you all for your work. Thank you to the staff for their work. And if there's no further discussion, I'd ask for a motion to approve the fiscal 27 budget. Moved by Derek, seconded by Chelsea. Last call. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. That motion carries. The fiscal 27 budget is approved. That brings us to old business. There is no noticed old business to come before this evening's meeting. Under new business, we have just one item, which is our nominating committee report from our nominating committee chair, Derek.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The nominating committee met digitally, had a digital conversation, and came to the conclusion that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We are recommending the current officer slate back to the board of Nathan, Shanna, and Phil.
Thank you, Derek. And just speaking on behalf of myself, I appreciate the committee's confidence. To remind the board about our procedure, the nominating committee is required to make a report at the August board meeting. An election will be held on that recommendation at the September board meeting for officers to take their roles in October. So receiving this report is all the action we need to do on this item this evening. Seeing no other, and there being no other notice new business, that brings us to our second and final public comment opportunity. This is the time we set aside during each of our meetings to take public comment on any item related to CATA or its operations. I would just remind folks, please fill out a blue card if you're willing to assist our secretary and limit your comments to 3 minutes. We will have a timer to assist you with that. I will call folks who have submitted blue cards in the order in which I've received them, and then ask if there's anyone else in the room who wishes to offer public comment. So I have had one card submitted from John Nolan Sr. John?
Yes, thank you. Yes, about 30 days ago, I was falsely arrested while riding a CATA bus. And I just wanted to know if somebody in this room could see if you could look into it and see if I could get my arraignment pushed up a little bit. And I didn't want to complain about anything. I just wanted to get that taken care of. That's all. Thanks for your time.
We appreciate your comment, Mr. Nolan, and we'll have staff follow up to discuss the matter with you after the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to offer public comment at this second and final opportunity this evening? Seeing none and there being no further business to come before the CATA Board of Directors, we are adjourned at 5 p.m. Thank you everyone for your attendance this evening.